So welcome everybody. Buenas noches. My name is Muntiado Silencio. Welcome to Sala Comunitaria, Community Newsroom. And just a little bit of Poor Magazine. What Poor Magazine is a poor people-led, indigenous people-led organization, multi-diversity, multi-ethnicity, poor people-led, man. One of the things that about Poor Magazine is we the folks that are impacted, the people who are actually been through poverty, through houselessness, to crossing these borders, who experience, the struggles, is leading these organizations. And so you guys find yourself in this beautiful place. It's called Homefulness. And so yes, bear with us as we try to do our own poor people radio station that is literally built by us from the ground up. When I mean that, I mean it. Like we literally built the antenna, we built the studio. Again, with the help with folks who have the knowledge, that work at KPFA, that work with some of these community stations. But we're doing it, and it's hard. We also run a little, no, not little, it's a big school led by aunties and uncles and moms. It's a community school where we teach about our people, teach differently. But I'm going to stop blabbing. I'm going to pass it down to my brother Leroy, who's going to say what homefulness is, I believe so.
Hello. Yes, the name is homefulness. No, homefulness is an answer to homelessness. It's been built by the work of Poor Magazine. Poor Magazine does workshops and education around wealth hoarding. So because of that work for years and years, Poor Magazine has put together a group of people that share their wealth, and because of that, we bought this piece of land to take it off the market, and now we're building homes and school and radio, and we're doing it all by ourselves, but we still do it under the capitalist society we live in, so we do it with the permits and all the paperwork that goes with it.
I'll go with that.
So yeah, we're in Community Newsroom. That's PNN, not CNN, people. Poor People's Revolutionary Radio. And sit back and relax, as my brother said, because we're about to drive by your mind. So what we start with is, first of all, this is the Poor People's Editorial Board, because as formerly houseless, poor folks, mamas, uncles, bordered people, incarcerated and criminalized, media is used against us.
Yes.
The endless amount of talking about us without us. Even in the concept of what we call trauma porn, like talking and having all these stories about the homeless problem as though we are no longer people. We're just now become a problem. We're dehumanized and turned into the other thing, which is trash. They talk about sweeps. Shout out to our brothers and sisters right now dealing with that hygienic metaphor about humans' bodies who are no longer considered human. So as we hold all that pain, as folks who've lived through this or currently going through this or trying to decolonize our minds, bodies, and spirits, we are trying to take media back, because it's one of the ways, if we begin to tell our own origin stories, that we can build what we're in right now. We say that homefulness was built with a story, and we're very serious about this. It's very serious and very hard work. And right now we're trying to work with folks in Salinas and Butte County who suffered the fires to build their own homefulness. As well, folks in Berkeley, in the hip-hop-crazy Berkeley that just made it illegal to sleep in your own car 2 days ago, behind some politics, behind some hate that just continues every day in America KKK. So all that said, welcome to Community Newsroom. And what we do in this circle is everybody, even if it's your first time, is part of the Poor People's Editorial Board, which means we decide on stories, we bring up stories, we have a couple special guests. We have the amazing Chanel from Toronto. We have our sister here, I think from Root, or that, right? So we have a couple folks who are going to talk on what they do. This is an orientation meeting to poor and who we are and what we do. We do a lot of things, as my brother Moot said, but one of them is we put out media. So we have a poor press, a publishing arm. We have a radio like the Zapatista radio. It's literally, we got an FCC license. We're on the dial, and right now we're streaming on poormagazine.org. After this newsroom, it goes to Free Aslan with the amazing Joy Villarreal, who we'll get to know in a minute. And on Thursdays as well, we fill the dial as well. And normally at this hour is Voces de Migrantes en Resistencia with our Uncle Muteado. And before that is Poor People's Revolutionary Newsroom. Today we talked about the teacher strike, the crazy budget violence, and the banning of our unhoused bodies in Berkeley. So all that to say, if this is your first time, you're still going to be a voting member because there is no wizard behind the camera. Y'all looking at it. This is Poor Magazine. It's a fluid process, a community. There's many parts of our village. There's many of our folks who aren't here right now because of struggles and trauma. And we continue to come in and out of our own healing. Similarly, what we're going to do is we're going to start with something we call bio news. So even if it's your first time, we ask that you introduce yourselves with 60 seconds about who you are, something about your struggle or your resistance. So I'm going to turn it back to my brother Leroy to start that off.
Hello, so I'm the Black Crippled, started Crip Hop Nation, an international network of hip-hop artists and musicians with disabilities, and started to do writing at Poor Magazine in 1996, and started the first and ever online issue around race and disability.
Muteado silencio, presente me alegro. Mis palabras son mis balas, mi alma es mi lápiz. Muteado silencio, my words are my bullets, my pen is my gun. So sit back and relax, cause we're gonna drop by your minds. We didn't cross the border crossed us. Muteado silencio. I sometimes call myself a poet. At least I pretend, and I aspire to be one day. I'm a migrant from Michoacán, Mexico. I came to the U.S. when I was 6 years old with my family from Michoacán, Mexico. You know, again, for the same reason that a lot of families leave their homelands, for the lack of jobs, for the corruption, you know, for also what the U.S. does in our countries. And I'm just happy to be here, to be doing media. Earlier, it reminds me quickly, because we only got 60 seconds, right, that as a migrante, as an indigenous person, it's up to us as people, our own struggles, our own story, to tell our own stories. Oh. We can tell our own stories. We don't need people to speak for us and make careers out of us. Pass the mic, let people tell the stories, you know, and literally, stop capitalizing out of the struggles of people, like universities do, and colleges and all that. They study our people, and we just become numbers. But happy to be here among y'all badass revolutionaries.
Happy Mardi Gras, everybody.
Oh, yeah. Right on. I didn't. Oh.
That's what today is.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that.
In New Orleans, anyways. I'm Dee, and I live here at Homefulness.
Hello, everybody. I just want to say thank you to the Ohlone people for allowing us to be on their land right now. My name is Angel Hart, and I'm a volunteer with Sacred Sites Protection and Rights of Indigenous Tribes, and I've been working on decolonizing the Indian mascot at Armijo High School in Fairfield, California, so hopefully I can update you on that, on how it's going later on.
Angel.
So I'm Joey Villarreal. I'm at Poor Magazine when, I was being tortured and in prison in the concentration camp known as Pelican Bay Shoe, and that's where I met Poor Magazine. And I used to write articles, artwork, and they would publish them. And I was released from the concentration camp 2 years ago. I began to work with Poor Magazine, and now I have the radio show Free Aslan.
Yes.
So, Free Aztlan focuses on the Chicano nation, on Raza communities and other oppressed peoples and oppressed nations.
Oh.
And, it works to decolonize the hearts and minds of the people of these occupied territories.
Oh.
Hello, I'm Lupe Lujan, and I'm a visitor here today. Thank you very much. And I do a radio show at KKUP. But my struggle is to get stories told of Chicano people. Like Moot was saying, or Mr. Silencio over there. If we don't tell the story, somebody else is going to tell it for
Oh.
us, and so we can't have that. So that's my struggle right now. And I also want to give a shout out to the native group that's on the 1,000-mile walk. They started, the longest walk, and so they started in Alcatraz, February 11th, I think it was, and so they're gonna finish in Washington, July the 15th or something. So a big shout out to them right now.
Wow.
Hopefully the weather is not too rough on them. So blessings to them.
Yes. Oh.
Hi everyone, my name is Chanel Gallant, and as Tiny said, I'm based in Toronto, which is the land of the Haudenosaunee, Mississauga, New Credit, Anishinaabe, and Métis people. And I don't know what to say about myself. I organize people who are criminalized for working in the sex trade. And I've been doing that for almost 20 years, something like that.
Right
Between
on.
15 to 20 years, yeah. I come from a family that has depended on all kinds of criminalized work to get by. And I really believe in the right of people to do whatever they need to do to survive and thrive in capitalism. And believe in that strongly myself. And I mentioned to Tiny that I was coming to town because you contacted me about the book that came out, and I've got a little piece in there about being a poor kid who went to university and how angry it made me. I think it's like the angriest piece I've ever written. And I'm writing a book right now on the relationship between sex and capitalism and how sex is used as a resource and extracted and criminalized
Wow.
by capitalism.
That's what's up.
Bienvenue, Poor Magazine.
What's that?
Bienvenue,
Oh,
Poor
thank you.
Magazine.
I'm getting a French welcome, actually. I am also a white settler of French Acadian heritage. My people are French farmers, so merci. Et à vous.
Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Rosa Cabrera, founder of Reclaiming Our Own Transcendence, which is a survivor-led project in response to sexual violence, interpersonal violence, and domestic violence. I'm Afro-Dominicana, economic refugee from Harlem, been in the Bay Area since 2001. And I'm here because I want to share some resources that we're trying to kick off the ground in response to interpersonal violence, and just recognizing that doing the work of combating sexual violence is also decolonizing work as well.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Anti-social workers and case manglers call me crazy, lazy, dumb, and a bum because my knowledge don't come from the institution. Yeah, I'm a poverty scholar. That houseless mama, that houseless daughter. I'm a poverty scholar. All the people you don't want to see, never want to be, look away from me. What you gonna do, arrest me? We're in your city. Yeah, I'm a poverty scholar, and I usually rock my jailhouse attire because me and my po mama did the poverty crime of being unhoused in occupied indigenous holler. I'm a poverty scholar, the melanin challenged daughter of an Afro-Boricua mama for without whom there would be no me, a mama soltera and a welfare queen. I want to bring up my mom right now because we've been doing this beautiful book tour of this amazing Poor People's Textbook, yeah, buddy, that came out in this historic release. It's really deep. It's unspeakable words and love and prayer, and includes the words and work of Leroy and Mutiado and Dee and Auntie Frances and so many of us, including our youth scholars. But it also includes my mama's work. She made the first little version of this when we were still struggling back in, doing our office for Poor Magazine, which was started by a homeless mama and daughter, me and my mom, when we were in our car. We were sleeping alone in the isolation nation of Americlan. But I want to bring it up too because my mama used to say, if we can't laugh at this ish, then we can't live through it. And she had an amazing sense of humor. And so all that to say, we just came to a really big book tour. And I'm almost done with my 60 seconds. But we went through a really big book tour. Went to LA. We rented a party bus. It was like insane. We went to Tia Chucha's. Shout out to Tia Chucha's in the Los Angeles Poverty Department. Yes. We love you. We love you, Luis De Rodriguez. All of that. And then also in Oakland, and we did it in the East Oakland Library and Fruitvale. We love you. We did it in San Francisco. We did it in City Lights. Anyway, on the very last day of the very last gig, which was back here in San Francisco in occupied Ilanu, we were pushing the walker from Mama Misha in the car. Shout out to Mama Misha Irizarry. We're pushing the walker in. We're pushing the scooter in. We're pushing the wheelchair, pushing our asses in the car and all of our things. And tell me why we left the bag that had all of our ancestors on the street. And I mean, it wasn't their ashes or anything, but it was their pictures for the altar, which we've had at every single event, because we honor our ancestors wherever we go. We say the revolution will not be melted in a pot. We all walk the spirit differently. But anyway, we also left all the gentrification tours our us jackets there. So then I woke up this morning and I realized, my mama and Uncle Al went on a walk and they wanted to look fine. Yeah. I'm just saying. They wanted to go to the TL, kick it with their friends, and Chemo's father was in the bag too, and he wanted to kick it with his friends. Yeah. So wherever you are, Ma, I know you're doing something that needs to be done in the TL. Wherever you are, Uncle Al Robles, I know you're doing something that needs to be done. Tori and Deja Hughes, James Umu, we love you, and we'll print out some more pictures and have another piece and another ceremony to get you back where you sort of maybe belong, but I know you belong everywhere. Anyway, that's said. Thank you. Thank you, ancestors. So next up, we're going to sort of go a little deeper into Who's the Room. So we heard from our beautiful sister here about the work you're doing. So this point, we ask maybe you and Chanel both can kind of flesh that out a little bit, like maybe 3 to 5 minutes, and then we open it up to questions, and then we talk about it as a group. Is this something we want to do a story on, do as a radio show, do whatever? So
right on. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I wasn't expecting to be broadcasted, but this is great. So what I came here to talk about is our upcoming program called Healing Cycles of Harm. And it's an 8-week healing program for people that recognize that they have caused harm and are seeking a supportive environment to deal with some of the underlying factors that causes us to cause harm, right? And it's different than the court-mandated, anger management programs, right? Partly because the anger management programs tend to be very didactic, very like here, thinking, making sense and trying to make sense away from causing harm. The work that we're doing recognizes that the harm lives in our bodies, and our bodies record the trauma that's impacted us, and we also understand how that trauma causes us to cause harm onto others, right? So we're using somatic arts and expressive arts in order to work through some of that trauma. I want to take a moment and just kind of demonstrate some of the work that we're doing to kind of give an example. Can you hold the mic for me? So, as I mentioned, I lived in Harlem, and I went to a Black and brown Catholic school. And part of what they did to kind of discipline our Black and brown bodies is they would tell us to sit down on the desk, right? Be quiet and cross your hands, right? So over time, I realized recently that this was how my body learned how to find quiet, right? And I didn't realize that until just recently. So I'm gonna invite you doing that, right? So the body has a way of quieting itself whenever it feels discomfort, right? Whenever, we do this without knowing. For some of us, it's doing this. For some of us, it's embracing a self, playing with the hair, right? Crossing our legs, right? Crossing our feet, rocking, yeah. But one of the things, can you hold it up some more for me, please? One of the things that our bodies also become familiar with is violence, right? Especially if we're constantly exposed to habits of mind that align with violence. If we're constantly engaging in institutions where violence and coercion are the norm, right? And it becomes so normalized that we can't even point it out, right? And so sometimes violence feels like this, right? And trauma becomes a home for us, right? So I want you guys to come back to that, what feels familiar, what feels like quiet, and do a little shift. So for me, I'm going to uncross my fingers and shift it over, and then cross it again. Right? If for you it was like your leg crossed, maybe cross it the other way, or do something else, right? So how does that feel for you to kind of do something different with that? How does that feel for folks? For me, it feels awkward. I don't cross my hands like this.
No, I don't.
Right?
Ever.
Seems like it would take a lot of effort and thought.
Right, right.
People's
It takes a lot of effort and thought for us to do the work of healing too, right? Sometimes healing can feel like the same juxtaposition. Sometimes healing can feel uncomfortable if we're so used to kind of moving with the grain, which is generally moving with systems of violence, right? Culture of violence, right? So part of the work that we're doing is to try to make healing feel more like what feels familiar for us. We're trying to move differently in our relationships to ourselves, our relationships to each other. And so we're using kind of like these body practices, mindfulness, and expressive arts to do some of that. And some of our framing, we recognize that capitalism is part of what encourages a culture of violence and a culture of rape, right? And we understand that these institutions, right, continue to perpetuate that in these relationships, and that they affect our interpersonal relationships, right? But primarily the work that we're doing within these 8 weeks is focusing on how these institutions have been housed in our bodies and taking over our bodies, so that we can be mindful of when we're perpetuating some of these same attitudes and ideas and actions, right? So I welcome questions that people might have about the work. We also have 2 positions available for participants who want to do some research work. These are paid positions with stipend, and it's an opportunity for us to get to know from the participants and how we're doing with our work, how facilitators are facilitating, and how effective the work is becoming for them, because it's a pilot project and we want to make sure that it's effective.
Do we want to open it up for questions? Does anybody have a question? Yeah.
Oh, you go ahead. Go.
Oh, hi, I'm sorry. I'm new. I don't know any of you, but I have a friend and her name is Candy. So
Oh yeah, she was
yeah,
good.
she's on her way. She invited me. So hi, I'm Peaches, everybody.
Okay.
So can you guys tell me a little bit more about your group and what is it that you do?
Yeah. Tiny go.
Well, you're talking about okay, so right now you came late, so we're gonna go back a little bit. Right now there's a special guest. She's what happens right now is a couple special guests talk about what they brought, and then we're gonna go back into, I'll kind of fill you into what we're doing.
Okay.
And then this is community newsroom. It just falls from the community. If they have stuff happening in the community, events, stuff that they're working in the community, you can bring it up here. Yeah. So just, welcome though. Welcome. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
So,
Oh,
Andy, you had a question?
Just.
Go ahead.
And
Hold on.
And I think there was an organization too, where Sully was working in San Francisco. I forget the name of the organization, but something interesting that they were working also with the folks who were inflicting the violence. And we know that a lot of times that people that hurt people are usually people that have been hurt themselves, in childhood trauma or whatever it is. I just think it's right on, because a lot of the times I could, I grew up in domestic violence, and I seen how my sisters kind of normalized that. But also how even in my own family, uh, making that dialogue, it seemed like the perpetrator right away, which is stupid, they'll be the ones feeling attacked. If you be like, yo, what are you, well, that was wrong. What? So how do you guys go about of having the perpetrator sometimes feel like they could come and themselves need healing, and that's why they're perpetrating the violence they're doing.
So one of the things that the kind of foundation of our work is this understanding that the body naturally responds to try to protect itself, right? And so there's been some work done. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Nadine Burke-Harris's research and understanding trigger responses, right? And this idea, or it's not just an idea, but it's science, that whenever we sense danger, whenever we sense a threat, our thinking brain turns off. And then the back of our brain, which is some people might call the lizard brain or the animal brain, only knows 3 responses as fight, flight, or freeze, right? And so I think understanding that is important, especially for those that cause harm, because when those that cause harm respond defensively, right? They're responding from that part of the brain, right? They're not making sense and trying to understand or empathize or find compassion, right? They're looking to protect themselves, which is, and it's really hard for us to come from a place of compassion as well too, because our response to harm in our society has been to shame individuals, to punish individuals, to lock them up, to isolate them, right? And what would happen to our brothers and sisters if that was the way that we responded to harm all around? Like there would be not many of us around, right? And we are also not recognizing that we cause harm, right? And it's hard for us to recognize that and not dehumanize ourselves, right? So I think that understanding how the body responds to these accusations helps us to not identify as perpetrators. This is why we don't use words like perpetrators or abuser, right? We talk about people that cause harm because the act of harm doesn't define the person, right? As you said, hurt people, right? And there are some other things that are coming into play that causes people to cause harm. And that cause of harm is also a response to a threat many times as well. And it's different kind of knowing that, right? It makes sense talking about it, knowing it, but it's a completely different experience when you feel where in your body that shame lives, right? And where in our body do we hold that punishment, for ourselves, or that inability to understand, that we've caused violence, and running away, right? That freeze response, right? It's a completely different experience, understanding how, where those places, those things are stuck, in our bodies, right? And we're unable to move differently, and we're unable to respond the way survivors need us to respond if we don't see where that's housed in our bodies. We're going to continue to respond the way that we feel comfortable, the way we feel familiar, which is to respond with violence, right? To be defensive, right? To punish those that are making us aware of the ways that we're causing harm. Right.
Okay, beautiful. Any other questions? So I guess, well, A, you need to say how people can reach you, yes. And then B, just in terms of supporting your work, because I know you also came to this community to, possibly offer it to us, which I really appreciate. Right? We do several different things because we're all traumatized people coming out of homelessness, poverty, incarceration. This is our life. We do a lot of things to try to hold each other self-accountably, because we never engage with the police. We never call the people who test, arrest, and incarcerate every poor person they get. But that's really hard. That's not like a Winnie the Pooh and the Sunset thing, right? Right. So we're always doing things to hold each other. We have an elephant circle. We call it elephant because we see ourselves as interdependent. Like the elephant, we can't survive without each other interdependently. We don't call CPS or APS. We have a school. We have a lot of mamas in struggle. And when we are faced with them being in more struggle, we don't call the system on each other. We move in closer and try to figure out how we can help each other. These are very, very, very hard things to do and very real things, right? So all that to say, we have this thing called the HEALS group, Healing from Addiction Through Art, Liberation, and Spirit. And so it might be nice for you to, for instance, come in as a guest to that. That's where I'm kind of thinking. But then I'm also thinking, I don't know what other comrades think, and we can vote on this, is to have you featured on one of our radio shows, as well as maybe have, if you're interested in writing a story about this for Poor Magazine, these are other channels to get out the fact that you're doing this too, right? So do people think that the radio show idea is good? Are we with that? Is that a yes? Yes? Okay, so then it would probably be on me or Moots. We do a news hour. Or Leroy and me. And then the other thing is, how would you feel about writing a story about the work that you're doing for the magazine? Is that something you'd be down? Okay, so why don't you tell people in the looking audience right now how they can reach you?
Hey, so via email, we take root@gmail.com. We also have a website, www.wetakeroot.com. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/wetakeroot. Forgot to mention April 6th, we're hosting a 1.5 hour workshop demo to demonstrate and share with community this work for free at Homies Empowerment. And I think some of you guys are familiar with Cesar Cruz's work.
Yeah.
So April 6th at 2 p.m. Homies Empowerment, come through. You'll get an opportunity to get a taste of this work.
April 6th, what time?
April 6th from 2 to 4. And there's also an event posted on our Facebook for that.
Beautiful.
Again, facebook.com/wetakeroot.
All right. So that's what's up. We will definitely follow up, and we'll also try to work on seeing you get to the HEALS group. Let's turn it over to Chanel to talk about the work you're doing in Toronto in the book.
Hey everyone, thank you. I didn't prepare anything for this, so I'm just gonna riff.
Yes.
So like I said, I've been organizing people in the sex trade for a very long time. Mostly it's just been really at the grassroots level. I still do that.